Welcome, everybody, to another episode of Itzli-Ra, the podcast where we talk about all things related to enlightenment, spirituality, and
Everyday people in everyday life.
my name is Carlos.
I'm Veronica.
And we have a special guest, Erin. How are you?
I'm well, thank you.
Awesome. Yeah. So, in today's episode, we're going to be, I'm talking a little bit to Erin to understand what her journey looks like on the spiritual path, because we're all on different paths that all lead ultimately to the same path, I guess, if you subscribe to the fact that there's enlightenment out there somewhere, and maybe there is and maybe there isn't, but that's kind of part of what we're here to talk about. And then we'll see where it flows, and then we'll get into manifestation and kind of how manifestation works, because there's all kinds of different viewpoints on that. Everybody has their own thing, and you hear it a lot on TikTok where people are like 10 easy steps to manifestation, and you too can be, it reminds me of those old movies that are old shows that would come on late at night where people are like, in 10 easy steps you can make $1 million too. But yeah, so let's get started and talk about your journey. Like, how did it start? Like, what was the catalyst?
Oh man. Okay. So it's kind of been a lifelong thing. I was raised in a very conservative religious household. Kind of started questioning things when I was probably 10. I was confirmed Catholic as well. After high school, I joined the military. Then fast forward to about 5 years ago, I was working as a medical assistant, and my husband deployed for the first time in our relationship and in his career. I herniated my lower back a week to the day after he deployed. And I was alone out in San Diego, no family around. So dealing with that was kind of the catalyst. It was the first time I was ever truly like alone in my life. And so that kind of downward spiraled very quickly into this beautiful process, awakening, if you will, but I call it an unlearning and remembering. It has been the most difficult and beautiful thing I've ever gone through. So it started through pain and trying to find ways to make it through the day, honestly, and truly just make it through the day. It wasn't about goals and long-term success. It was, how can I survive the next 5 minutes? And so that's really where my spirituality started.
Wow. That's pretty. So you've gone through some personal challenges with your health, or what was that pain?
So, oh gosh. Okay. So it's quite a long story, the health journey I've been on. I was un and misdiagnosed for years with different medical issues. In January of 2019, I was diagnosed with Lyme disease and a couple co-infections that go with that. A couple years after that, I was also diagnosed with Ehlers-Danlos syndrome, hypermobility type. The issue with my back, the herniated disc, caused so much instability that I ended up with a herniated disc in my neck as well because of the misalignment. I had a labral tear in my hip as well. It was so bad that it was partially dislocated, like my hip was, and the doctors didn't know about it because nobody did. I have a very high pain tolerance, we found out. So I was walking around and modeling with 2 herniated discs and a partially dislocated hip and a cane, not knowing. Right. And because I handled pain so well, doctors were less than willing to hear me out and order imaging, which kind of perpetuated the downfall because the pain increased the longer we went on. Yeah, it's been quite a long journey, but it's hard for me to look back at it sorely because I've learned so much, and the things I've learned, I know I can help other people. That's why I'm so grateful that y'all invited me onto this, because I want to be able to help and tell as many people as much as I can about everything I've learned, and especially normalizing the grieving process associated with all of this.
Right. Yeah, that is a lot. I can definitely hear what you're saying. I work in the medical system. Mm-hmm. I deal with a lot of grief and loss and loss in what could be or should have been, right? And how much pain that causes, because you're coming from one world and you really, really, really want to go back to it, but there's no going back. So then you have to create this new world. But then there's a new world, there's so many challenges that come with it. And the thought, like, how can I get here? And all these things, and the narrative that we tell ourselves in our mind, and it's kind of like that pull between both, and it's just so hard to get there. So for you, what did you find that helped you
So
be able to transcend that?
For me, I had to practice. I guess if you have to slap a phrase on it, radical self-love. But I mean that in where most people have a to-do list, right? And it's like, go to the grocery store, do whatever, X, Y, and Z. My to-do list became brush my teeth, take a shower, put on clean clothing. And I would only focus on doing one of those a day because that's all I physically and mentally had the energy and ability to do. So I had to normalize that what we think is just a part of our normal day, brushing our teeth as humans, that had to become an actual event. That was the thing. And so I think that kind of put me into this state of what I like to call like a hyper presence. Because you can't look past 30 seconds, 5 minutes from now. You truly are just moment to moment. Because it could be fine, like we're talking right now, 5 minutes from now, a few years ago, I could be in bed for hours or in pain or on the way to the ER because of the pain. But it truly could switch in that short amount of time. So focusing on, okay, if I'm happy right now, what can I do to continue this happy in the next 30 seconds for the next 5 minutes? Worry about it after. Anything else after. You just meet it where it's at, you know?
Right. No, I always tell my families, meet yourself where you're at. And you only have the capability of making the decision with the information you have on hand. So if that means that you are not able to get out of bed today, can I do this? And that becomes small victories in life. And each one will bring more and more and more. It's just living it in, like you said, the hyper present moment, because you have to. There's other way around it at that.
Exactly. And you're totally right with the finding those little wins, because that's really what it had to become. You had to find something to celebrate every moment, because the opposite option was just suffering in that pain. And that was going to happen anyways. So now in that place of this is already going to happen, what can I do with it or from it? And so, right, finding those little wins to keep you going. That's what helped me the most. And it's rewiring the thought process of what those wins should be, right? Because as a society, you're like, oh, you brushed your teeth. Okay, everybody does that. No, not everybody can. So brushing your teeth, and it's just such a simple example. A lot of people don't realize that that is a thing, you know?
No, 100%. And I talk to Carlos about this all the time. It's in my own children. It's the reframe of the things that happen in life. If even in moving forward, if you can take something that was such a hurtful thing, or a thing that you may not be able to do, okay, let's reframe it and see how we're able to do it, right? How can we switch things around? How can we convince our mind that, you know, this is a route to go? And and it's a process. It is definitely a process. So definitely can see how you have come a long way from that point, you know, and to where you are now, and the importance, like I always said, the importance of telling your story, and for other people to understand, because those are the things that aren't shown, or they're not, you know, everything's about on TV, the perfect thing, the perfect person, you know, every life should go this way. But we all know that that's not the case. And when some of these things do come, these obstacles, that's what I call them, these obstacles are in our way, there is something that we have within us that is resiliency. And it may take a while to get there, but we do have it. And to be able to share that with other people is, how can I say, what one of our other guests said, you're holding your pillar, right? In your pillar of life. Yes, and in your section, and you're letting that shine so then other people can support you.
You
And
become a
then
lighthouse, essentially.
Erin, I'm
yeah.
curious, when you were in that hyper aware state, where you got yourself into that hyper aware state, what did you see? What did you feel? Because I'm sure that triggered a lot of maybe visions or like
Oh yeah,
things.
we could talk for hours about all of this stuff that this journey has afforded me as far as visuals. One of the most recent things that I've kind of locked in my state of hyper presence, you know, on the new iPhones where you have, I guess, like the portrait mode, and it kind of blurs everything out around you. So if I'm in a state of hyper presence looking at my cat who's on the table right now, right, it'll look like I'm on portrait mode. Everything around her will be blurred out in the background and I'll just see her. Recently, I've started connecting with birds. And when I close my eyes to channel birds, it's like circles, concentric rings. But when I meditate to astral project, it's more like lines going by, like the stars or whatever. So it's been interesting to see the different visuals that have come up with channeling different things.
That's cool.
That's so fascinating. And I look at it as all we're all in a certain wavelength and frequency and energy. And I think our eyes deceive us so much sometimes that once you do get into that full presence and your brain is not hyperactive, that something's going to happen, right? You're able just to zero in on these things that are literally going on around us, but we just haven't attuned our mind to be able to see it.
And what I've noticed is when I am able to lock into that state of hyper presence, it kind of slows down time in a sense. You get like you're plucked out of your time vortex, if you will. And it's like 15 minutes went by for me, but it was 3 hours somewhere else, you know, and time just happens differently when I'm hyper present in a way I can't truly articulate yet.
Well, I think that you start realizing that time doesn't exist, right? I think that's the sum of all of it. So yeah, when you're kind of in that state. So did you go ahead, Verionica?
I think that, yeah, time doesn't exist, or you're able to slow something down because you're in this in-between state.
I love that.
And, you know, sometimes I've done that a couple times. And when I first did it, I was kind of in shock. I was like, wait, what just happened? Hold on. I was over here looking at this, and then now I'm like looking at something else. But it's almost what's the best word? Ethereal. Your body's like this ethereal, and you're like doing this shifting, but you're still there. But your essence, I guess, is the one that is doing the motion. And yeah, it is pretty amazing. And imagine if the more we practice it, how much more you can communicate with other beings.
And that's what I've noticed as well. Once you realize that you have the inherent ability to do these things, it does just become a practice thing. It's like riding a bicycle. Once you remember you can do it, you start doing it more often, and now it's second nature again.
Exactly. And it's always kind of been part of our nature. We just kind of had that blocked off. And like you said, the relearn, right? The unlearning of how we used to be probably when we were young children. And, you know, as adults, that got kind of erased from our memories.
So you mentioned that you mentioned that you astral project. So was that something that you accidentally did? Yes. Or was it something that you just practiced? You heard about it and you're like, I'm going to try this.
It was absolutely an accident, and I didn't realize that until about 2 months ago. Now, this had happened 5 years ago. Yeah. But what I thought was locking in on like a meditative state, I now know was actually astral projecting. But that was a beautiful experience. Also, I was in the desert actually with this like dome over me, and it was just me. And I was doing a solar plexus meditation at the time, a guided meditation. And there was a white pillar coming out of my solar plexus that connected to the dome. And through the guided meditation, the dome filled with light. And that was the first time that I had ever astral projected.
How did you feel?
I'll never forget that experience.
How was it? Was it one of those things? Because I don't know about you, but like the first time I do something, I'm like, oh my God, I can't believe, oh my God. But then after a while, it's like, okay, cool. I know how to do this now that I've added it to my toolkit of things that
Yeah.
I can do. This is cool. But
Mhm.
I'm further refining my practice and I'm getting to
Yes.
the point where I'm better at it.
Exactly. And that's definitely how it happened as well. Now, part of it, at first, initially, I didn't know what had happened. Now, what was interesting and confirmed it for me was I had a friend who had recommended that podcast, not podcast, the video to me for the guided meditation. And she, on her own, was doing distance Reiki healing on me.
Hmm.
She didn't know that I was doing the video when she was doing the healing, but I described something with the light that happened. And I was talking about the way the light started to like twist as if it had like different cables making up a big pillar and they were twisting. And I was telling my friend about it afterwards and goes, oh, that's crazy because I was braiding energy however long ago. And we realized after the fact, I'm getting chills again, but that we had like connected in the astral in that way, unbeknownst to either of us. And so that's kind of what helped me realize that it had happened and it wasn't just me falling asleep and dreaming during a guided meditation. But yeah, it took a while to really understand and grasp that that's what happened to then want to try it more intentionally.
And how's it gone for you?
It's great. It's so great. What's great too is it's so there's different ways to kind of employ it, I guess is the word. So like if you want really great rest, right? You can get into a deep meditative state for about 10 minutes or so, and you can feel like you rested, took a nap for an hour and a half, just from the quality of the breath and whatnot. It doesn't have to just be going to different places. It can be just grounding yourself in your own energy and enjoying that space as well.
Yeah, revitalizing your own body with your breath, right?
Exactly.
And allowing it to optimize itself because it's an amazing healer if given the right conditions to be able to get you into this union with your body.
Absolutely.
One of the biggest things I think that was a blocker to us was, the fact that we grew up Catholic. So the religious indoctrination was heavy. My mom was till the day she died was, super strict Catholic. And, getting over all of that was definitely a challenge up until a couple of years ago. It was still a challenge. Did you face the same thing? Was that something that you faced early?
Yes, early, definitely. So I realized at a young age that I was attracted to men and women, which went very against Catholicism. My grandmother was Irish Roman Catholic, and she used to live across the street from a church and a Catholic school. And I used to go to that Catholic school up until like first grade, I think is when we moved. But I think the thing that saved me was the discrepancies in all of the indoctrinating. Specifically, if I am a child of God, why are you telling me he dislikes me? If I'm a child of God, if I'm made in his image, why are you telling me that I don't look correct? I'm confused by those two things. Forget anything else, just those up front. I think what helped me with that is actually in 2021, I became an ordained minister through the Universal Life Church. And I think that was kind of like my quiet way of like infiltrating the religious system, just to spread the love from inside though, because it's muddled. The messages could be wonderful. It's just been muddled in translation. And so, yeah, the religious stuff, I know affects so many of us.
Did you ever have like experiences with any deities in the religious context when you were younger?
When I was younger, not that I can recall. So in the spiritual process, there was one time I was microdosing with psilocybin, and I saw the only visual hallucination I've really ever had during microdosing, and the face changed from a man to a woman in the sky, and at first it was Jesus, and my breath caught. I was like, there's no way. I've been trying to unlearn all of this just for Jesus to be the part, right? But then the face changed more to a woman, and I became acquainted with the deity Inanna, which then led me down to the goddess Sophia. back to the Mary Magdalene and the Rose lineage and all of that. And so finding the truth in Catholicism, Christianity, the little bits of it, and exploring those more deeply, I think helped as well, because then you realize how much is just kind of surface level fluff.
Right.
But
It's all like filtered. It's filtered. And a wise woman told me, you know, because I had an aversion towards, you know, like when you saw Jesus, it's like, oh, come on.
Right.
Mm-hmm. But she said it's not the prophet itself, right? It's not that energy itself. It's not his energy. It's the people that perpetrated that onto you. So let go of that, because they're all one and the same, right? All of those deities have that energy and bring certain types of energy, but to release that aversion, because there's no point in it. There's no point in having that, because it's not about that. So I was able to release that, and then it like shifted, and I was able to see a little bit more clearer the different deities that we do have that we can draw upon to support us in whatever it is that we're doing on our life path, and to no longer kind of when someone says that oh, what would like adds of Jesus in everything they say, then I think about, oh, I'll send them blessings because they're not on the path yet for themselves, right? They're using something external to be able to give them an excuse for a certain behavior or whatever. So I learned to release all of that. But yeah, it took me a while. It took me a while when you become so indoctrinated and so hurt and traumatized by the church itself that the first thing to do is you know, of course, not want to have anything to do with it. But then when you become wiser and realize the amazing things that are hidden in, you know, the church teachings and, you know, the different types of saints, and then Mary Magdalene, period, right? How she was ostracized, and then learning all that is just so rich and an amazing path if someone wants to take that. And, you know, for our listeners, you know, if you want to learn more, dive in deep. There are plenty of female saints that we can say are energies within the Catholic Church that are pretty amazing, that you can dive into. That's not necessarily tainted by Catholicism, and give us spiritual wisdom.
There was a book that I had read back in 2021. I've read it a couple times actually since then because I liked it so much. It's called The Sophia Code by a woman named Kaya Ra.
Yes.
Fabulous book. I think that was probably one of the most helpful books in an energetic way that I can't explain. But that helped kind of open up a world beyond the Mary Magdalene Catholicism that I knew. It kind of helped bridge that gap. And then also reading about the Gnostic Gospels. And I think I don't know how to pronounce it, the Pistis Sophia, I think. So I've read through those as well. I was actually able to listen to them on audiobook. So that kind of helped me unlearn the indoctrination from Catholicism, because it went into a deeper level of parts of the Bible that were just left out.
Right. A lot of those things that were removed, and Carlos and I always talk about this, that if every 10 years it shifts, it changes, the book itself changes from what we were little to what we are now is very, very different. And it's all to morph into, you know, whatever someone wants to control in this space of time. I know
about control. It's all about control.
Yeah.
And using that energy to create something, right? That's dictated by the whatever religion you subscribe to.
Ultimately, it's a business.
Ultimately, it is. I'm curious about deities, because Veronica and I, we've had a podcast where we talked about deities, and one of the interesting things is that, at least I think, that there's like a base set of energies. Now, these energies have existed for a long period of time, but there's so many commonalities if you look at all the different pantheons that have existed throughout time, where, you know, this Zeus is like Odin, and it just keeps going down the list for all of the various energies. And you wonder, is there a base set there of energy that exists that over time is just taken different forms depending on the culture that has manifested the deity, right? And then do you use the energies of deities, or do you subscribe to that to be able to kind of help you on your journey?
Yeah, I mean, honestly, I think use any tools that are given to you, right? I do love working with, or I have in the past worked with deities. I think you're entirely correct. I believe that it's probably the base set of similar, same energies that, based on your culture and where you were at certain times, they're going to, from my understanding, show up in the way most palatable to the person viewing them. And so that's why they seem so similar between different cultures, because in my understanding, they probably were the same similar energy. And I have worked with some over the years. I think the working with the energy of deities, it's more of a guide system than we think. And I know that sounds kind of redundant because we see them as guides, but I think it's there. I work with deities in the sense of I allow interaction with them to push me forward. So if I feel the energy of a deity, right, who's a good example? We'll go with Lilith. I have a picture of her right now. So the energy of Lilith, it's a divine feminine energy. It's a darker feminine energy. So when I would work with Lilith, that was when I was going through therapy for childhood trauma. That was when I was reconnecting with myself as a feminine on the physical, because I'd been living in my masculine energy so long. So it's not so much that I go to deities for specific problems. More so, I ask for aid in allowing my energy to be expressed in front of me in ways that I might not be able to understand at the moment, if that makes sense.
No, it does. I love that you say that, because I think growing up Catholic, we pray for things and needs, right? Needs. So I told Carlos, the deities are kind of mirror images of what we would want to see in ourselves and the energies that they bring. And so we don't ask them for things. It's more like, okay, this is the energy they embody, to be able to support us, to be able to then find that within ourselves and bring that in. And that could be at any point of life. And you don't have to stay with one deity, all your life. Those can change throughout the phases that you go through, but I don't look at it as, most of you're worshiping. And it's like, no, it's not. There is just an example for you to draw upon to be able to then move forward in whatever it is that you want to do.
Exactly. What aspects of this deity do I feel most pulled to in this moment for X, Y reason?
Right. And then it could be anyone and anything. And male or female deity, it's just whatever it is that you feel resonates with you in that moment in time that you're in.
Exactly.
What I find fascinating about that whole subject of deities is that, everybody's reality is different, right? So I think that if you choose to worship a deity, you'll present that, because that's ultimately your expression of what you want that to be. Just like with the church, you're praying, you're asking for things. I mean, you're really asking yourself, but you're projecting that you're asking to some deity, which is fascinating when you finally start doing work and uncovering the fact that you're just asking yourself ultimately, right? Your inner self.
And that's a whole other rabbit hole mind trip once you reach the oversoul point.
Yeah, which is also, we were just talking about that in a previous podcast, was your shard of who your consciousness is, your higher self, and then some people call it the oversoul, some people call it the grid, where everybody's connected, and what that is like. And it is a whole rabbit hole of it's a fascinating topic to get into, because you start talking about, like, well, okay, if I'm just a shard, how many shards are there of this that exist, and does that then make it so that, like, twin flames, soulmates, like, is everybody just a shard of one, like a higher being, a higher
consciousness
self?
Consciousness. It's consciousness.
Yes, it's all consciousness. And it's funny, from all of the things that I've read, even if you subscribe into beyond just yourself, and we'll say like extraterrestrials and people from different planets and different star systems and whatnot. From what I've seen, all of us collectively still agree that there's an oversoul, even when they're not from our side of the galaxy. They still agree that there's something bigger than themselves. And I find that to be fascinating, more so than just something bigger than us.
Man, we can just go, dude. I think we're gonna have you on for a couple of different topics, because the one that's really interesting for me that I really want to dig deeper into at some point is exactly that. The idea of extraterrestrial star seeds, like all of that stuff.
Love it.
Where in the frequency of the universe do those sit? Right. And are they equivalent to, you would say, a deity, angels? Like, probably. I mean, they're just different manifestations, potentially. Yeah. I don't know, but it's a fascinating topic. Yeah. Fascinating topic.
It really is. Yeah. The books by Dolores Cannon, I don't know if y'all have heard of those. So the Convoluted Universe series, those audiobooks are like 19 plus hours long. My husband and I listened to 6 of them. They are wildly fascinating, but it's all talking about how this woman accidentally became a hypnotherapist and then accidentally became acquainted with the subconscious and oversouls of these different individuals. And then they realized that the oversoul was bringing forth past lives, future lives of these people that she's talking to in the 80s.
Yeah.
It was wild.
It's really fascinating, her work. And I started her work probably about maybe 10 years ago. And that's when I started thinking about, past lives. Oh my goodness. All of that, within our DNA and what we bring forward into this space and time, and just these knowings that you have already that are inherent in you. She does. I love that I think hers are more like, I don't want to say cross-cultural, but also
it's
cross-planet dimensions, like all these things.
Every barrier gone.
Just like,
yeah. No, it really, truly, truly eye-opening. And like that, her works were probably some of the most influential on this evolution, because they transcend everything you just mentioned. They don't care who you are in the best way, because this is the reality of what she's talking about. And that was incredible.
Yeah, I did a quantum, hers is QHP, quantum hypnosis.
Healing technique.
I had a session.
Did
once
you?
It was so...
I had a session too. My partner did that as well.
I was like, wow, this is fascinating in how you're going back and bringing things up. And at one point, just why I behave a certain way, and these little images that came forth, and they're, the best way I could put it was just so fascinaning altogether.
Yeah, absolutely. It was. Yeah, the session was crazy when we did it as well. Like individually, my husband and I. That I only did that 2 weeks ago, and I feel like that session was probably up there in the most influential events of this spiritual evolution for sure.
Yeah, I look at all these modalities as hints to be able to support you to move forward in whatever it is that you need to. And you can take it like a grain of salt, right? These things, but I feel like you can pull little bits and pieces to kind of make you wake up a little bit more, or affirm like, okay, this makes sense because this is where I'm at right now. And it'll give you that extra push to move forward, or even just being more open. Like for me, what it created in me was to really see all beings as one. That's what my session did. Yeah. And recognize that humans were the first ones to speak, and that's why we have control of everything. If dogs could speak, I mean, they all have their own language, right? Yeah, but they're probably thinking we're the dumb ones because we don't have the telepathy yet, or we haven't allowed ourselves to have that telepathy yet. But there's new youngins coming in that do have that, and we're putting them in a box, right? As non-speakers, they can't do what we can, but they are able to do more than we can. So that's what I got out of my session. And so, I look at everything like that now through those eyes, that any animal is a being in it itself and is sacred itself, and we should treat them with respect and not the way we do now. So you got to try it, Carlos, one day.
No, absolutely, you have to. I've been recommending it to everybody.
Okay. Sure, I'm open.
It's different, but like with everything, you have to be open, right? To be able to receive and get into a space to be able to retrieve things back and understand them for yourself.
Yeah. And a lot of times you kind of have to let it marinate, I think, for a few days before you really understand the full effect of what you experienced.
Right. You guys are both seekers.
I was in the seeking phase for a long time before. But I think now I'm settling into my wisdom years, so I'm able to share more.
I think that's how I would explain how the session was for me too. The healing session, it gave me a sense of calm and, like you said, a sense of wisdom to where I don't feel like I'm seeking. Nothing's truly changed, but I don't feel the need to seek more information. Right. It's more like, okay, it'll just come. It's all good. Right. We're flowing.
It's all there. It's all in us, and we're unlocking it every day.
Yeah.
And especially when we interact with other people to support them. Yeah. So
it's interesting because I think that with this new generation of folks that are coming in and how they consume content and how they absorb things, I think that, the social media platform is huge for it. And so TikTok is one of those that, has a huge following across multiple age groups, but the younger folks tend to really be into it. And that's where they consume a lot of their content. That's what they don't read, but they definitely look at TikToks. And you've been on there. I've been on there. There's some wild stuff out there, man. There's some stuff that you're just like, whoa, where did this person come up with that? Which is kind of cool. But then there's also a lot of misinformation. And so I was curious about why you started your TikTok, because your TikTok is Atavus, right?
Mm-hmm. Yep. Atavus Reeves.
So why Atavus, and why did you start your TikTok?
So originally I started the TikTok just as a social media platform. I had been modeling for a little bit before I started the TikTok, but I had a lot of stage fright and was relatively uncomfortable in front of the camera. And so TikTok was kind of a way for me to explore who I was while being in front of a camera, under my own control, without the stress of having somebody else behind the camera filming me. So that's kind of where it started. And then, so the name for my page came from a meditation. I listened to these Arcturian healing meditations hosted by this gentleman named Gene Eng. He's a PhD, I forget the two schools, but he stopped being a neurobiologist to lead these healing retreats and work with Arcturian energy. And so during one of those meditations with the Arcturian Council of 12, I heard the name Atavus, and it stuck, and it means, loosely translates to like ancient in Latin, Greek origins.
So ancient meaning what?
Oh, old soul, if you will.
Old soul. There you go. I was curious, right? Because it resonated with you, so it was just.
But more so, when I say old soul, I don't mean just like I'm a kind, empathetic person. I genuinely feel that parts of me have been here from the beginning of time, which, I mean, all of us have, but I have that true inner knowing. And so that's why ancient kind of fit better for me, I think.
So when you started your platform, was it to, experience kind of what social media is, or is there like a reason that you want to be out there? Are you like, hey, I have a message and here's what I want to deliver to folks?
Before, so I had an Instagram that was pretty successful a few years ago, and that's how I got into modeling through that. So at the time, it was more of like a fitness person. I had been on a fitness journey. I had lost 80 pounds in like 4 years. And so that's kind of how that social media footprint started. And TikTok felt like a place where you could kick your shoes off. I felt like I could be more me, where Instagram is more polished, right? So that's how it was for a while on TikTok. While I have all this knowledge that I want to share with people, I never really knew how to present it or felt very comfortable in presenting it as authentically as I wanted to. Then one day I think it was probably me just filming it to message to myself. But I started with those "Hey Baby" videos and those encouragement videos, and that just kind of stuck for me. And it's brought me so much joy to be able to just say that to people, because there were so many years in my life that not only had I not heard it, but I was hurting for it. And I know, and I've been in that place where even if it's a stranger, even if it's a 5-second interaction, that could be enough to push someone forward for those 30 seconds, 5 minutes. So I just tried to become who I had needed. And it just kind of snowballed from there into this really great thing, I guess. And what's awesome is there's a lot of pushback at first about it. In the comments, a lot of people, they thought it was a fake page. They thought it was AI. They thought it was a woman that would then turn around and be rude, I guess. I don't know. But there's a lot of pushback at first. And then it became, thank you for this. I didn't realize I needed to hear this. To now I'm seeing individuals support one another in the comments without my involvement. And that has just been the most beautiful evolution that I didn't foresee happening. And so, yeah, now it's just a platform for encouragement. And I know I've been through it, and I know I can help talk other people through it. We may not be going through the same thing, but I can help put things in perspective that will resonate. I've found that I'm kind of good at that.
That's cool. That's really cool. Because I think especially with what's happening in this time and space, people need a little bit of something, little act of kindness, words to say keep going. I mean, that's super helpful for people, especially in the way that they consume content, especially on TikTok.
Yeah,
you know,
just
5
quick
seconds, 10 seconds, they're like happy. You made my day. All right, I'm going to tune in tomorrow.
Honestly, like, I think there's a reason why we've all ended up calling it doom scrolling, right? Because it's just bad stuff. It's just the reinforcing of we know it's all happening, and we don't have to keep force feeding that to ourselves. And so I'm hoping that my page can kind of be that little break. Just snap it. So what's coming to me now is it's kind of like I'm trying to break people out of the pain cycle, if that makes sense. So like for me, when my pain was really bad, I would start singing, because singing activates a different part of your brain than speech. So if I was in too much pain to speak, I could sing, only for the sake of interrupting that pain cycle enough to get me out of thinking about that pain. And so that's what I'm trying to do, just interrupt that pain cycle just a little bit.
See,
that's a way to do it, because it's interesting when you start with a "Hey Baby." What I was getting was, okay, this is for someone that it's coming off as like grandmother love, right? Or mom love that you didn't get. And some people need that. And it's kind of like, oh, okay, hits you in the face. Exactly. And then people listen to the rest of it. And I see where you're talking about switching, the pathway, because it is a little jarring in the beginning, but it can capture an attention, and then your brain goes into a different path. So yeah, that's actually a really cool way of doing it, in a great intention, right? Because when we put intentions out there, we manifest. And for TikTok, I think that would be perfect, because there's so much of the younger generation that's using TikTok as for their mental health, right? And if they can find support that their brain can consume in a short period of time, then I'm all for it. And that's what your site provides, and then that's amazing, and it'll reach whoever it needs to reach.
Definitely. And it in the beginning, I really didn't have any intention other than let this just help who it needs to. And then ironically, I haven't even seen very many younger people on my page. It's actually, I think it's like 35 to 50 plus year old men. And the amount of comments that I've received of, I haven't heard this in years. My wife doesn't say this, all of these things. And it hurt my heart. And that kind of made me want to do it more. Like, why aren't you hearing this? Why don't we express this to people anymore? Why do we all feel so closed off?
And that's the other vibe I got. I got that this hits men because they're missing that. They're missing that nurturing or love from the wound of the mother, let's just say that the mother wound, and those were the only words that they were able to take with them that were nurturing. And so it's one of those things that they can be attracted to and go, wow, okay, why is these words making me feel this way? And hopefully they're able to explore it more and see why it's missing, right? Why is it missing? And maybe it's something that they need to work on and to be able to then receive it in a way that they need it.
No, and that's such a big part of it too. So we all talk about learning and unlearning on this journey, but not a lot of people talk about receiving manifestations or how to receive those things that you're working towards or asking for. And I think that's probably the biggest part of it, because even once you learn all of that, if you don't know how to receive the things you're asking for, you may reject them, and then you're going to be upset and get caught back up in that downward spiral.
And I believe that love is the one that most people don't know how to receive.
Oh,
it's
absolutely.
the biggest emotion and it's such a beautiful emotion, but we have no idea. And a lot of it is because of our conditioning. And there's a lot of work that goes to knowing how to receive it yourself. Not only the love you give for yourself, but the love from someone else, or recognizing it, right? Recognizing what love really is, to be able to receive it versus rejecting it. And that's a whole nother podcast that we
should. I don't. I mean, that's one of those things where it's like, that's a loaded word. Love is a loaded word, because
we could dissect that for sure.
It's romanticized. It's like, it's crazy, right? It's one of those things where it's like, do you really know what love is? Do you know how to love somebody? Probably not.
Disney does it to us though, as young kids. They indoctrinate us on, we're supposed to be rescued. It's supposed to be, love looks like X, Y, and Z. You're supposed to get this, but there's never any mutual relationship.
Yeah, they don't talk about the actual dynamic.
No, it's just the romantic part of it, supposedly, and you need to be rescued. And that's what the majority of people do.
Or the idea that there's one person out there for you.
Yes.
Only.
Yes. One person has to check every box. And that if they don't check every box, it's wrong. You can't check every box for yourself. So what do you mean? And that's okay. But let's be realistic.
Yes, be realistic, right? Be realistic. And why is it that we're doing this? Why do we have the check boxes and all these things? So there's so much. And I believe if children were able to keep their love intact from when they were little into adulthood, we would be in a better world.
Oh, absolutely. We absolutely will. But I do believe that this new generation of children, the ones that are like under 10 right now and coming, they are just going to be living in that energy, I believe. I think they're going to be our example of what that looks like, fully embodied from the start.
Yes, I agree. We're kind of seeing more of it now that, they have a lot to inherit on this planet, and so they're going to be.
Well, I mean, that's what we've talked about. We've talked about the fact that our job is to raise the vibration so that this next group can start coming in more enlightened, more aware, more remembering more. I don't want to say awake, but like remembering more of themselves, right? So definitely, for sure, and you see it. You start seeing it already with these new ones that are coming in. So. Yeah. It's a huge responsibility, I think, on our part.
I think it's awesome. I think if we're able to support a whole generation to come in and just advance the world for the greater good, I'm all for that.
Absolutely.
So we were going to talk about manifestation, but pain keeps coming up. So we got to talk about pain. We've got to talk about pain because it's recurring. It's recurring. And I'm hearing you need to talk about pain because I think that it's one of those things that people shy away from talking about pain and how it relates to your journey, your spiritual journey, and just in general. And because in being a man, right, you got to suck it up. Right. Pain's, ignore it. Right. Don't show that emotion. Don't suppress all of those things when that's completely counterintuitive to how you need to be able to express yourself. Absolutely. And you need to show that vulnerability and know that pain hurts, but pain also teaches. It's a learning process that you go through, and it's not easy, and it wasn't meant to be easy.
No.
So I'm very curious to hear your take on pain and
Pain,
what it's meant to you and how it's
pain,
improved your journey.
it was my sole motivator for about 5 years. What I thought was a motivation just to get better, to get out of the pain, turned into, I don't know if this pain is going to get better, because with hypermobility, there's no clear treatment. It's a connective tissue disorder. So my collagen's weak, my joints are unstable. So unless I exercise and keep my muscle strength up, my joints won't hold me up. So that just comes with a standing amount of pain. And with that, and with Lyme disease also not having a clear cure treatment plan, I was faced with, I think I was 24, 25, you're going to be in pain, deal with it. That's basically what I was told. And so I thankfully have this energy in me that was like, okay, if I can't see the reason for why I'm in pain, I will create a reason to make the pain worth suffering. And so then my reason was, let me find ways to deal with the pain that I'm feeling to then help other people deal with similar pains. And I found a really great therapist who helped me. She offered this book called The Body Keeps the Score. I haven't read it, but the concepts of it are hugely valid and instrumental. And with keeping your emotions bottled up inside, what people don't realize is just because you forgot about what you were just feeling, your body didn't. And so when you go through an experience that on a subconscious level is triggering to you, and you don't realize it's triggering because you don't realize you're still upset about X, Y, Z, your body produces the exact same chemicals as it did during the original event. So you're bringing yourself back into, unconsciously back into the same cycle of pain that you're trying to get out of. But because you haven't learned how to process and feel the emotions, they're staying trapped, and they affect your body. They turn into inflammation, chronic illness. And so truly feeling your feelings is the best way to keep them from being stuck in the body and then affecting you on a physical level. That's what I've learned.
Yeah. Yeah. Bessel van der Kolk, he's the one that created that. He's an amazing person, really wanted to use psychedelics to support people that go through trauma, along with talk therapy. And then Gabor Mate with his work that he does on understanding emotion and naming the emotion and acknowledging it, right? Acknowledging it is the first. And especially with pain, I think a lot of the feminine, I'm speaking as a female, we sometimes learn in childhood to be able to take care of ourselves. We're a strong woman. We got to do this. No one's going to touch us. We develop all these walls that don't let us feel that pain anymore. So when we go into relationship, we sometimes sabotage ourselves because we've never allowed that pain to release, right? And that pain becomes, I look at it as, it becomes an entity, right? It becomes an entity. And when you want to create something new within yourselves, that pain can be encrusted into the walls of self. So until you acknowledge that pain and just say, look at what you went through.
Yeah.
Wow. This was really hard. It's okay to cry. It's okay. Right. And then the same thing could go for the male too, but it was just coming from the female perspective. Yeah. And look at how far you've come. Right. Look at how much hurt that was on your heart. Feel it in your body and see how it is you can release it. Yeah. Because you're no longer in that time anymore. You're no longer in that place anymore. And you've learned from this, and you want to grow from this, and you don't want to bring this into the next relationship or whatever it is that you're moving forward. So releasing that entity of pain from that space and time, I think is huge. And the biggest thing is acknowledging that it was painful.
That part. And I think, sorry, go ahead. I didn't want to interrupt you.
No. Go. No, that's okay. Finish.
I think so many of us, kind of talking about perfection earlier, have this idea of what life should be like without pain, without acknowledging the fact that we all deal with things that are painful. and we're taught to just brush that off. And so, like, an example, if somebody gets into a car accident, right? That's still a traumatic event. That's still scary. You brush that off like, oh, people get in car accidents all the time. Okay, but you survived it. You're unharmed, thank God. You still went through it. That was still a scary thing. Because what if it had been worse, right? And so I don't think we were ever taught how to acknowledge things for what they were or are, to give ourselves credit for the feeling, or to even allow the feeling to come to surface.
Exactly. Because again, like Carla said, you got to suck it up.
Mm-hmm.
Or you have a despondent mother that you want to try to go to see if she could help you, that, you know, she had maybe a certain way of or is busy or going through some kind of thing, so it brushes you off, and so you end up keeping that inside, and you keep it until adulthood, and obviously it creates this whole cycle in adulthood. But that first acknowledgement in your mind of, yeah, I went through this. Yeah, I went through that. Yeah, wow, look at everything that you've gone through. Let's take a step back here and look at that pain for what it was and what it is. And then let's flip it and see all the things that you did to support yourself through that, and all your wins, right? Yeah. To soften that pain, to be able to then release it.
Exactly.
Yeah, it's all work. It's all work, but it's also a lot of retrieval of a lot of past
it's work,
memories.
But it's work.
It is worth it. It is. And it's the beauty and the pain, as we were talking about before, how much it causes us to learn so many things and be who we are today.
Yeah.
And it's even more amazing when we're acknowledge and release it.
Definitely.
Yeah, my dad has a famous saying. You know, my dad's like super blue collar. He's a very like just regular dude. Our last name is Guerrero, right? Mm-hmm. Which translates to warrior in English. And anytime anything happens where you feel hurt, he's just like, you're a Guerrero, suck it up, right? Mm-hmm. Like that's the mantra. So that becomes the mantra.
Right.
And so you learn to suppress all of that, because
Absolutely.
That's what you're supposed to do.
Right.
And it leads to a lot of bad things, because you just don't know how to communicate your emotions. We're effectively, so anger and tends to be the emotion that you kind of lean into, because that's it's more accepted to be angry.
Right.
But what's fascinating is what you talked about, where when you start dealing with trauma, that your body has the same response as when that event occurred. So when you do the work, when they talk about doing the work, you're going back and you're dealing with all that trauma, and you're experiencing the pain all over again. The difference is that you're able to acknowledge that pain, you're able to let that emotion out, and then you're able to release it out into the universe. Because you've been holding it in for all the years, and it's had such an impact on you.
And 9 times out of 10, we don't even realize that we've been holding on to something from our childhood. My floor dropped, my mouth dropped when my therapist picked up that I had been holding on to a behavior from when I was like 12, from a situation that only spanned like 6 months. Mm-hmm. She picked up on that the first session. I'm like, okay, we're going to stick with you, because now I need to really learn. Now I want to know more about me and why I do those things. But that's what it is. I think to become quote unquote spiritually awakened, you have to be willing to face that dark. You can't just, like you said, expect it to be rainbows and light. There has to be a balance. And so if you expect all the best things, realistically anticipate going through the mud of the messy things. You can't have one without the other.
100%. 100%. We talk about that all the time.
Yeah.
Yep. Yeah. Just you need both the light and the dark. That's just how we are and how we function. And I would assume that that's how the universe functions as well.
I would agree.
I think go ahead. Sorry.
I was going to say, I think with the acknowledging our feelings and whatnot, gosh, I just had it. Sorry, it went away. Nope, I lost it. My apologies.
No worries. I think getting it back into the light and the dark thing, it also is a big thing to repress desire because it's considered bad or dark, when you need to embrace all of that and
Right.
experience all of that, because only by experiencing those two things are you able to become fully whole. And I think society does a really terrible job at allowing you to be yourself and express these things, because it's, oh no, that's bad, oh no, you're going to go to hell, oh no, that's a sin, oh you can't like another girl, or you can't like another boy. What is, no, when in reality you need to go where your heart wants to go, right, and experience those things to allow you to just keep moving forward on your journey.
Yeah, and I think a lot of society has conditioned us to think that if you don't lead with your head, then you're incorrect, as opposed to leading with your heart, without realizing that we don't mean your real heart in and of itself. We mean your heart, your energy heart, and that is going to supersede the conscious mind if you let it, if you listen to it. And I think that's another part of acknowledging the feelings, is learning how to listen to what our bodies and our minds are actually trying to say to us. They have their own intelligence. And society, I think, does a good job of creating noise so we can't hear it.
1000%. All the time. All the time.
Yes, definitely. You listen to your infinite self, what's within, and it'll show you so many things. It'll show you so many things. So, Erin, for our listeners, if there's one piece of advice you would love to leave them, what would that be?
Find realistic, tiny wins to celebrate every single day. Even if it's just brushing your teeth, even if it's just changing your clothes, even if it's you took a paper towel and wiped off a 1 square inch section of your counter, you did something. It counts. It all counts.
It all counts. We look at it from the positive light as well.
Exactly.
That is, oh man, you put that into perspective, because I mean, you, as in society, you're too focused on the criticisms, taking the L's, right? What do I need to do to improve? How do I get better at this? It's never good enough. I've always got to keep chasing, and reframing that and saying, hey man, I got here. That's pretty good today. Right. Tomorrow I can get here, and just keep slowly building. And I think that also ties into, how you make things happen for yourself, or manifest things for yourself. You're not going to, over time, I guess you could manifest something massive if you wanted to, but it's about the small things. Build it all up.
It starts with the small things, for sure. Probably one of the greatest examples, real quick, of manifestation I like to talk to my husband about is actually the house we live in. Now, we live in military housing off base. We were living in an apartment beforehand. Because of my health, we got preference for this house. But there are aspects of this house that I was looking at on Pinterest 7 years ago before we moved to California. And it took the process of being in pain, doing that unlearning and all of that led us here. And I'm like, I can't be upset now because I've watched this play out, So it's really, it's being grateful for those little things. And that just kind of avalanches into a gratitude spiral. And then it's hard to stop. It's hard to stop after that.
Yep, it's the small victories that are important to see, because those will gain more and more, and we will then start seeing things through a different lens.
Yeah, realistic wins.
Exactly, realistic wins. That's
Polly
perfect.
just jumped on my. Hey, get off there! She's my black cat.
Oh, mine's right in front of me too.
Right there, look, see.
Oh, adorable.
Well, thank you so much for joining our podcast. I think that was super awesome. We're going to have you on again to talk about a couple of other big topics. I really want to delve into the starseed one, that whole thing, because it is very popular right now, and there's just a lot out there, and people can become really confused. So I think being able to provide a very honest, from our standpoint, take on it, I think we'll be able to help a lot of people.
I agree. Definitely. I'm looking forward to it, for sure.
Awesome. Thank you. Thank you so much. I
Yes.
had a great
Thank you,
time.
Thank
I
you.
mean,
I do too.
Yeah, this is great.
and I
You're
like
looking
your
forward to
pendant.
that.
Your pendant's awesome, by the way.
Oh, thank you. It's the tree of life.
There you go.
Yeah, you can see it. It's very beautiful. What's the stone that it's backed on?
Seraphinite.
Okay.
Mhm.
Is that what Dr. Gilbert said was a good thing? Do you know who Dr. Gilbert is?
I don't know
Dr.
that I've heard his
Yeah,
name.
he does the Vesica Institute. He does this whole meditation. He just passed away in February, which was shocking. I'm like, oh my gosh. Um, Great wisdom from him. I think it's cool that you're seeing all the modalities, and reading is probably one of the best things to be able to get wisdom from, because
Yeah.
you never know these books, the channeled books like the Sophia Code, for example.
Exactly. And that's another
Yeah.
beautiful part of my health taking a turn for the worst, actually, is I got all of this time to read. And in 5 years between audiobooks and paperback or tangible books, I've consumed over 100 different books. So I would love to share all of my wealth of knowledge, because I know people don't have time like I've been afforded.
Yeah,
So,
exactly. And I think that for me, the audiobooks have been a godsend, because
definitely.
even though traditionally I loved the book, and the books used to fall off the bookshelf when there was an existing Borders, and now we don't have that much anymore. Um, but yeah, and there's like just so much wisdom that people are sharing in these books, and they don't have to be bestsellers or anything like that. They can just pop out at you, and then you're meant to listen to a portion of it.
Exactly.
For whatever reason.
Yep.
For whatever reason.
I love that you said a portion, because I have about 20 books, right? Literally 20 that I'm in the middle of, that I've only read a few chapters of, and then I go on to the next book. But they're all starting to like come together with different information that's creating a picture. So it's great.
Exactly. And that's how I roll too, because I'm like, it's a half. Okay.
Right.
Move on. It's over here. And then you pick it up again, and then you learn something completely different. And you're just
Exactly.
like, oh, wow. Okay, this is really cool. And I wanted to thank you for bringing up the Arcturian Council of 12, because when I was moving, from California, but I moved from SoCal up to Northern California. And as I was driving with my partner, I usually get most of my meditative information when I'm driving, because there's nothing but you, and that's it. And so I went into meditation, and then I woke up and I turned to him. I'm like, write this down, Council of 12. And and he just looked at me, what? And I'm like, and they look like this. And that was it. And now I don't know what it is, and I don't know what I want. And I've been searching and searching. So now I will go look and see what this is.
I listen to them on Spotify, and I've listened to their podcast for about 2 years now.
Okay. I gotta do that, because
That's
I'm like,
very, very cool. Very cool. Like I read a lot of leadership books. I read a lot of science fiction, fantasy books, and then I'll sprinkle in, various Buddhism, Taoism, books like that. And what's really interesting is you'll find commonalities in all of it, right? Yeah. Because there's bits and pieces of things that have been pulled, or somebody's done a lot of research and has just kind of like pulled stuff together to come up with their own take. And I think this is one of the things that's very fascinating about the spiritual journey is you'll come up with your own take as you pull through everything. And that's what you will use to craft what your reality ultimately ends up looking like.
And I think
that's the cool part about it.
Yeah. I was gonna say, I think that's the point. I think that's why there are so many different modalities and ways for us to learn and interact with these different energies. It's because there's no one correct way. We're all individuals, so there needs to be individual things to do. So we're just being shown different ways that we can tap into that stuff.
And thank you for saying that there is no correct way.
Yeah.
Absolutely. There is no. Yep. Whatever resonates with you in that moment.
Exactly. Energy is energy.
Ultimately, it is.
And on that note, we will leave with that. Energy is energy.